David here with Figboot on Pens. Today I have for you something a little different, and something I personally consider to be very unique and very special. Sometimes when you look at a very expensive pen, seeing the value in that pen is very subjective. If you see a pen with like an Akatamanuri finish or a Urushi finish, to the untrained eye it might look like just some nice reddish-brown shading. But if you know more about the process and the work that went into the creation of the pen, then the value becomes a little more obvious. I have a pen for you today that I feel the artistic value is more in your face and is more easily understandable and accessible. The pen is from Taccia, and its name is the Winter's Breath. What I'm going to do today is go over a little bit about Taccia, discuss the parts and features of the Winter's Breath, and then talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it, show some measurements, size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to my friend Tom Bailey, who lent me this pen for review. Tom helps run our local pen club in the Raleigh-Durham area and is a fixture on the pen show circuit. He's a dealer for Pelican and Platinum and Taccia and maybe a few others. I can't remember them all. Tom has a very large collection and is more knowledgeable about the history of Pelican than just about anyone else you'll find. This pen is made from Taccia. They are a brand that's been around since 2003 and was founded by the fashion designer Xu Jinlin. The company is based out of the Los Angeles, California area, but a number of their models, especially the limited and special edition ones, have more of a distinct Asian and European flair. They have a history of using innovative and new ways to apply unique materials. Taccia makes some pens in the $100 to $150 range, and then they create some rather extravagant pens which are significantly more expensive. And the pen I have for you today is definitely in the latter category, and that is the Taccia Winter's Breath. Now, this pen is made from handcrafted ebonite and covered with over 40 layers of Urushi lacquer. And then it's inlaid with abalone in a Raden technique. Now, when you hear the term Raden, that's actually the technique of inlaying the material, typically like mother of pearl or abalone, into the surface of the pen. And then here we have quail's egg. Yes, you heard me correctly, that this white band that twists around the pen is made from quail's egg. And the eggshell is meant to symbolize the refreshing winter air. I really think that the contrast between the rainbow coloring of the abalone and the stark white of the eggshell just really works perfectly in harmony on this pen. I also like how the band is thicker in the middle, and then kind of the pieces get further apart the closer you get to the edge of the stripe. It kind of reminds you of a cool breeze, as it's meant to symbolize. Let's start by taking a look at the end of the cap. The end of the cap is flat and has some larger pieces of egg surrounded by smaller pieces. The cap is seamless, and the clip is a bit rounded with a little bit of a slope to it. It is a bit on the shorter side. While it's perfectly functional and does fit just fine in a breast pocket, I did think that the clip could stand to be like a 1/4 inch longer, just a tad. The cap is straight, and then there is a small step down to the barrel, which is straight as well. And then the end of the barrel is adorned with eggshell, just like the cap. But it also has the number of the pen. In this case, it's 48 of 50. This is a limited edition pen with only 50 units available worldwide. Now, I will admit that this picture makes the numbers look a little sloppy, but I don't necessarily feel that's a particularly fair assessment. This was taken under a microscope, and when you look at the numbers with a naked eye, you can tell they were hand-painted, which is great, but they don't look that sloppy at all. Here are a couple other microscope pictures I took of the eggshell on the barrel. The process for applying this shell is just mind-boggling. First, they carefully crush the egg so that it's broken up into tiny pieces. Then the pieces are painstakingly reassembled on the pen. You can see here where the pieces actually line up. Some of the cracks, like the internal cracks, actually travel from piece to piece. It's just amazing to think that each and every one of these tiny pieces were handled by the artisan and then affixed to the barrel. So just imagine how careful you would need to be and how light of a touch it would take to work with this eggshell. It kind of blows me away. The cap does twist off. Now there is an inner cap with a spring behind it, which helps keep the nib from drying out. But when you're uncapping the pen, there is a bit of a spring as it releases the cap. And then when you're capping the pen, you actually need to push in slightly in order to have the threads catch. It's really no big deal, just something that you have to realize. Once you get the cap off, underneath is this 18 karat gold nib. This nib is manufactured by Sailor. On it, the Taccia logo is laser engraved and is stamped with 18K and 750, which means 75% of the metal in this nib is gold, which is the aforementioned 18K. It's rhodium plated and is available in soft fine, soft medium, or soft broad. So basically all kinds of soft. This nib is a bit on the small side. While it performs outstanding, I wish it was just slightly larger. Here it is in comparison to a Sailor 1911 standard. It's virtually the same size nib, except for the shoulders of the Taccia nib aren't quite as pronounced as they are on the 1911 nib, but they're the same height. The section is slightly flared, and it is a bit on the thin side. It's 10 millimeters, which for me is about as thin as my taste can stand. Any thinner, and it wouldn't be comfortable for me personally. Now, your hands may vary though. The section does contain some eggshell as well, and I like the dispersing pattern used here. Also, the lacquering creates a very smooth section, so you don't feel the individual eggshells when gripping the pen. One thing I did notice when I received this pen, that there was a bit of discoloring on some of the shells. When I received the pen, it was inked up with the new Mont Blanc Beetles Psychedelic Purple, and I noticed that a bit of the purple coloring had bled onto the section here. You know, I tried to gently clean it off with a damp tissue, and it really didn't easily come off. So I cleaned the pen and inked it up with a different purple ink. I don't have the Mont Blanc ink yet, and it was just about running out. And I did notice the section was susceptible to staining. When I just wiped the section off, it did leave some color behind, and so I had to wet a tissue and really rub a bit to get it off. But some of the original purple coloring that it arrived with remained. So since this pen is on loan, I didn't want to overly clean the section too vigorously to remove the coloring that it arrived with. But you will want to be aware that you should clean off this section as soon as possible after inking to avoid potential staining. The threads are a bit on the larger side and aren't sharp at all. And the barrel is rather light in the hand. It's only 17 grams, but it is very comfortable. And it feels very solid. It feels like a quality pen. The cap does not post by design. You see here it doesn't even fit on the end of the barrel. And that's how you should do it. If it's not meant to post, then it shouldn't even fit on there a little. There's no question about the design intent here. Now, with this craftsmanship comes a price. The price list of the Taccia Winter's Breath is approximately $1,900, which means that you will find it priced at retailers for a little over $1,500, which is a lot of money for a pen. But is it worth it? Now, I've said this before, but when you're talking about pens in this price range, you are purchasing something other than a pen here. You're buying an heirloom. You're buying a conversation piece. You're buying a piece of art. And that's exactly what this pen is. It is a piece of art. I do think it's one of the more stunning pens that I've ever had the opportunity to use. It's something that a pen aficionado can appreciate, but also people with no knowledge of fountain pens can recognize the beauty of this pen. Now, $1,500 is more than I've personally ever spent on a pen, but when I heard the price, I wasn't necessarily thrown off by it. I believe that for what you receive with the Taccia Winter's Breath, that is actually a reasonable price. Now, if you told me a couple of years ago that I'd go on record that $1,500 was a reasonable price for a pen, I would have told you were insane. This pen is not for everyone, but if you are in the market for a pen in this price range, then I would highly recommend this pen. There was a lot to like and appreciate about it. And as you'll see in the writing sample, the nib performs outstanding, as virtually all Sailor nibs do. Now, thanks go out to Tom for letting me borrow this very beautiful piece of art. It will be returned to him shortly. Now, Tom had actually borrowed one of my custom Rubik's Cubes and forgot to bring it to our last pen meeting. So I basically told him I was taking this pen from him as a collateral until he returns my cube. That's a fair deal, don't you think? I mean, it was a pretty special cube I let him borrow. I do know that Tom will be out at the LA show coming up here shortly, and he will have this pen with him. So if you would care to see it in person, you could find Tom's table, and I'm sure he would be happy to let you check it out. And then, like any other good salesman, he will try to sell it to you. So now it's time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Now here we go with some size comparisons for the Taccia Winter's Breath. Just to get another close-up look at it, that is just a stunning, stunning pen. I just love the Raiden, and then that stripe is just incredible. So yeah, I like this pen a lot. So here it is in regard to some other pens. Here it is with a Sailor King of Pen Ebonite. The King of Pen Ebonite is just slightly longer. Then here it is with a Mont Blanc 149. And then here it is with a Pelican M1000. In regard to some other pens, here it is with a Parker Dual Fold Centennial Big Red. And here it is with a TWSBI Diamond 580. And then here it is with a Lamy All-Star. Just to show you a bit of nib comparison again, this is what it looks like in comparison to the Sailor 1911 Standard. You can see that it's virtually the same, other than the shoulders being a little bit narrower on the Taccia. But then this is what it looks like against the 1911 Large. So you can see that the large. The nib of the large is like one step up and just slightly larger, which is nice. So here we go with the writing sample for the Taccia Winter's Breath. This is 18 karat gold nib, and the ink that I'm using today is the Birmingham Pen Company. This is the Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol, they call it the Pop Purple. This is what the purple looks like. It's a nice solid purple. I like it a lot. I thought that it went well with the coloring on this pen. In regard to some of my other favorite purples, this is what it looks like in regard to the Cross Violet. It's just not quite as saturated as that. And then here it is with the Lamy Dark Lilac, which has a bit more sheen to it and is a little bit of a deeper color. But the Birmingham Pop Art Purple is a decent color. This is what the bottle looks like. I like the bottle of this shape just because it makes it easy to get just about any pen in there, and you can access most of the ink, and there's no problem there. So Birmingham makes some really nice inks, and most likely I'll be featuring those in a little while. So here we go with the rest of the writing sample. One thing I didn't mention that this is a medium nib. It's an 18 karat gold nib, but it is a medium, and it is a rather generous medium nib. It did railroad a little bit there, but I will say that the nib has a bit of a sweet spot to it, and once you get out of that sweet spot, then it can get a little on the scratchy side, but when you are within that sweet spot, it feels very, very nice. In regard to flexibility, you can see that it does get a little bit of railroading here, but you can get some decent line variation. In regard to some reverse writing, it caught there, and it was just a little bit scratchy, but it gets the job done. And I do find that in regard to wetness, that this is a fairly wet nib. I think it's a fairly wet nib, but I think that this ink is a bit on the dry side, so that's why it didn't get as much. But it does lay down a rather generous line. And in regard to some fast writing, once you're in that sweet spot, that there's been no issues at all. So thanks again to go out to my friend Tom for the loan of this pen. This will be back to him shortly. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you later.